This year has been one of the most damaging to indigenous populations in Brazil in what can be described as over 5 centuries of genocide. 2020 has seen the Covid-19 pandemic, illegal invasions into indigenous lands, wildfires and violence. We have more details in the following report.
Illegal miners and loggers do not work from home due to the pandemic. In 1 year, an area of over 11,000 square kilometers of the Amazon was deforested. Between January and November, 60% of indigenous lands were devastated by more than 100,000 fires. The invaders are accused of spreading COVID-19 among the indigenous population.
This was a scary year because the indigenous people suffered attacks by land monopolizers, loggers, illegal miners, the government itself, and this was accompanied by a pandemic that claimed many indigenous lives.
The Yanomami and Yekwana communities estimate that a third of their population may already have been infected by COVID-19. Indigenous people enter the risk group at 20 years younger ages than non-indigenous and are under threat of severe symptoms when measles, malnutrition and COVID-19 are combined.
Wherever there is illegal mining, there is COVID-19. We have no doubt that Garimbo was the main vehicle of coronavirus transmission for the Yanomami and Yekwawa people within the Yanomami indigenous land. It was not through the health officials in the Yanomami district or that they were infected from COVID-19. They stayed in their homes in the city practicing social isolation.
The pandemic attacked the sources of ancestral knowledge and indigenous languages, with the death of historic leaders, such as Ariadna Yawalapiti and Paulinho Paikan, companions of the cacique Raoni, who also lost his wife, Pehuika. The indigenous leader, who is the world's spokesperson for the Amazon, was hospitalized from COVID-19 at the age of 90. In 2020, he overcame a digestive hemorrhage, the coronavirus, and experienced an attack on his village.
He is a great example not only for me, his legitimate grandson, but for young relatives of different ethnicities in Brazil. I'm not the only one who will continue this fight. We will need many young relatives to be together, united and empowered to fight.
2021 will not be easy neither. The Brazilian government is promoting projects for granting the title of public lands, environmental reserve, and indigenous territories illegally occupied for commercial exploitation. In parallel, negotiations are in progress for a free trade agreement with the European Union that will deepen Brazil's role as a commodity exporter in exchange for value-added products.
We denounce the increase in deforestation and human rights violations as the main threats, and we ask not to approve the agreement as it is currently written because it doesn't guarantee environmental and land protection or the protection of indigenous people's rights.
The global environmental crisis converges with the arrival of neo-colonial extractivism in parts of the Amazon that have never been exploited before. Places where isolated or recently contacted indigenous communities live. The death of the defender of the indigenous rights, Leieli Franciscato, as a result of an arrow shot by the isolated indigenous people he was trying to defend from the invasions, is a symptom of the destruction of environmental control and indigenous protection entities in a context of invasions and the almost complete elimination of fines based on environmental crimes.
We are in an extremely sad, difficult and complicated situation for the environmental situation in the Amazon because we're dealing with lawmakers who have no environmental commitment and they are not embarrassed by legalizing crimes because the invasion of preservation units is a crime. To destroy a reserve in order to keep the person who invaded it and destroyed it inside is to give a message to the population: invade and destroy. The government guarantees legalization.
Over the last year, there have been repeated reports of evangelizers groups entering indigenous lands in complicity with Bolsonaro's administration. Furthermore, the president vetoed 16 measures that forced the Brazilian state to protect the indigenous people during the pandemic. Afterwards, the Supreme Court overruled the veto.
Those patterns that converge in a genocidal structure are in the Brazilian DNA. Since 2018 to date, we have continuous evidence that these patterns were intensified so that we can talk about an ongoing genocide.
Indigenous peoples, which are on the front line in the fight to keep Brazilian flora and fauna alive, end the year with almost 900 deaths from COVID-19 and over 41,000 contagion cases.
Ignacio Lemus y Julia Nassif para TeleSUR.